as we expect a few more to come rolling in, let's go ahead and we can move ahead. As you should have been notified in your window, this meeting is, or the webinar is being recorded. But thank you and welcome to our Developing Markets webinar. You'll notice that this is set up a little bit differently than how we typically conduct meetings. And obviously there will be a discussion post this to see if it's a webinar fashion that we want to go forward with. But we will first hear from our panelists and then open it up for Q&A. For this particular setup, I did allow attendees to have access to microphones if you find it easier to vocalize questions, but there is also the Q&A box that you can submit your questions at any time via typing or a text option. We do request that to avoid outside noise, you remain on mute unless you are asking a question, but I do have control of the mute button and I can mute and unmute your microphone if there is any accidental unmuting. I anticipate that we'll have a few late joiners, especially as we navigate the registration process and the getting access to. So I'll go through the rest of the information before we begin. As I said, it is being recorded and we will make the recording available to attendees and other interested parties going forward, like the remainder list of the local foods. Let's see here. Oh, you will receive a survey following the webinar. We do greatly appreciate your participation in this or any of the feedback methods, as it not only is a requirement for the Bush Foundation grant supporting this project, but it really does help ensure that we're bringing you the right information and the right learning opportunities. There will also be additional material that will go out in that email, which supports or enhances the information you will see today, such as pictures, videos, etc. You will see in your speaker screen, we have 3 panelists today. Amanda Olson with the Farm to Child Nutrition Farm to School Specialist with North Dakota Department of Public Instruction. Sam, I hope to not murder your name because I was going to ask you and I didn't get a chance. Sam, I practiced it yesterday and I swear I had it. Jankovic?
It's 3 words, John Kowski.
John Kowski. Thank you. I was thinking I had it yesterday and then I stumbled. But operations supervisor for West Fargo Public Schools. And then we have Troy. Is it Troy Held or Heald?
It's Troy Heald.
Heald. Okay.
Like you are Heald.
With Country Blossom Farm, and he's a producer supplier for the West Fargo Public School District. We will hear from our panelists in that order, and after each of our guests has had an opportunity to kind of share their information, we'll move into the Q&A portion. Of course, questions and answers go way better when we are hearing questions that you want to have answers to. So I strongly encourage you to use either that Q&A, the chat function, or when the time comes to unmute yourself and share those questions. So with that, Amanda, are you ready to kick this off?
I'm ready. Hi, everyone.
Yay.
Thank you for the introduction, Kay. It's great to be here today. Like Kay said, my name is Amanda Olson. I work for the Child Nutrition Office at North Dakota Department of Public Instruction. Our office oversees all child nutrition programs. And so that includes obviously the National School Lunch Program, school breakfast, and many, many more. So today I'm just going to give us a brief introduction of like what Farm to School is, just so we have that general knowledge, and go into just a little bit about how it's working in North Dakota, but I want to make sure that I leave enough time for Sam and Troy to really talk about how much their relationship and how that's really been working. So let's get into it. So today we're going to talk a little bit more about how it works in the cafeteria, right? But Farm to School is everywhere, right? Farm to School is in our communities, it's in our classrooms, and there's many elements to it. So what is Farm to School? Essentially, Farm to School, there's three elements that really make up a great program. Now, I want to remind you that none of these elements are required in order to be considered doing Farm to School. So we think of procurement, right? We're going to talk a lot about serving local products in our school meals, right? We're talking pretty heavy on that today. But in addition is, we're really keen in on the education and obviously into school gardens as well. And when all three of these programs are happening at a school district, it really solidifies the program and the understanding for children of where their food comes from and how important it is that they have a hand in it as well. So Farm to School is really an open concept. And I think that's what really throws a lot of people off is that there's no special like box for people to sign up to say that, hey, I'm in the Farm to School program. And what I mean by it's an open concept is also that it's very diverse. What it is working for West Fargo Public Schools isn't maybe working for a smaller district, say like Drake Animus, or even, Strasburg, something like that. Every community is diverse in what you have access to and really what you have for labor, all of those things that can really make a farm to school program strong, that's going to be different in every single community. So I always tell our schools, I always tell even our daycares, don't be afraid to be creative and diverse with your programming and events. There's a lot more to just the local food aspect. Obviously, that's what our number one priority is, but education is really important as well. So like I said, the fundamentals of Farm to School is that it's not mandated or required. West Fargo Public School does not have to participate and purchase local food in order to maintain being in the National School Breakfast or the National School Lunch Program. They're doing it because they have a firm belief that they really want to have as much local products coming in as they can. They want to give a diverse and healthy menu to the children at their schools. And many schools across the North Dakota feel the exact same way. And they've done a really great job. West Fargo has done a really great job in making that happen. So like I said, it's going to be different in each community. It's going to be different in each district size, right? West Fargo is very large compared to some of our smaller schools in the state. So how it works is going to be different. And I think what's important for us is to help you understand the differences in each district and where you can be successful. There's going to be producers that work really well with a large district that have enough capacity and volume to supply a district like West Fargo, but there's also producers that are maybe only have enough volume to supply a small school that is maybe 150 students max. I also always tell you, don't think just about what's happening in school lunch and school breakfast. There are many other programs that producers can be participating and supplying their yummy, delicious food for. Don't forget about our daycares, right? There's also after school programs. There's programs that operate outside the normal school days. It really is more than just lunch or the lunch tray at school. And like I said, there's not a special sign up box or, that you say, hey, I'm in this program. So how do you get started in the program? Talk to me and we can figure that out. But we're not necessarily keeping track of that right now. So let's talk just a little bit about procurement. And what I mean about procurement is essentially just the purchasing of local foods. So what do institutions and producers need to know before selling or buying local foods? There are some state and federal guidelines. There's some purchasing thresholds. There's a bidding process if you go over, for example, the $10,000 mark. There's contracts, there's communication, there's all different sorts of pieces. And I think as time goes on and we do some education pieces, I think we could really hit hard on some of these topics to make sure that producers feel really comfortable understanding how that process works with a school. And the same goes for if we have daycares or child care centers that are on the child and adult care food program as well. It's similar things. There's, purchase thresholds, there's bidding because they are using federal dollars in order to purchase this food. And so there are guidelines that they have to follow. There is a really great resource about the state guidelines and that NDSU produced. It's called the NDSU Guide to Buying and Selling Local Food. It has an excellent layout of what each requirement is, all the way from like beef or other proteins to eggs to local produce as well. And so if you have questions on that, please reach out anytime and I can also send out that document. So just a quick little highlight is you're going to hear some schools talk about when you get into this process of working with them is a micro purchase, a small purchase, formal procurement, all the methods, all the things, right? It's very, very legalese language. So a micro purchase, just for example, is a threshold in North Dakota state up to $10,000 a purchase. This is one time a year. A lot of producers use this because they're only probably supplying, especially when it comes to produce, you know, $10,000 worth of lettuce or $999,000 worth, $9,999 worth of lettuce just for one school year. And so a lot of our producers are using this. But when we get into the big districts like West Fargo, they're going to have to start going into the bidding process. And that's because they're purchasing in a larger capacity. So let's talk a little bit about what North Dakota Farm to School has done in previous years. In 2023, USDA sent out a survey, and it's growing. Farm to School nationwide is growing. In 2019, school food authorities, otherwise school districts, were participating at about 65% nationwide. In 2023, about 74% of school districts did at least one farm to school activity. In North Dakota, about 75% of our districts in the school year of 2022 through 2023 served local foods at least one time. And they are participating in some sort of agriculture education, and whether that's with gardening indoor or outdoor. In addition, about 19 of our schools, or about 8%, responded in that survey saying that they had an edible school garden. So what they are producing in that garden is also being brought into the child nutrition program at that school. I think this number is going to increase. We've had a lot of requests for grants and building of, even we think of greenhouses across the state that are being built at schools, and just a lot of different increases, I should say, in the capacity of gardening at schools. So in 2022 through 2023, when schools responded to this survey, they said about 6.5% of their total budget was spent on local food, but that did include milk, right? And we can get into the conversation about milk. It's hard to know exactly where the pinpoint of that's coming from, because once it gets to the processor, it's mixed between South Dakota, North Dakota, Minnesota. But we can see that the top 5 products that schools were purchasing when they responded to this survey was beef, milk, baked goods, apples, and potatoes. And if we added in milk purchases, 14% of the SFAs, that made up 14% of the school's budget. So we could see how expensive milk could be, right? From that survey too, we also saw some really good outcomes. 55% responded that they really felt they were increasing their access to better quality foods. They love the smell. They love cutting into a fresh fruit or vegetable. And in addition, they really felt that their students, at least 45%, saw an increase in consumption of fruits and vegetables. They're having that positive relation. The children are having that positive relation to a fruit or vegetable. And it helps, and it even solidifies that if they're able to see that growing in their school somehow, or even some extra education pieces on that. And for school meals among staff, they even increase their positive perception of it as well. We do have work to do, right? In North Dakota, I will say we are still in our infancy of really growing the farm to school movement, especially in comparison to, Minnesota. But we're getting there, and there's obviously a lot of people on this call that are really, really trying to grow it, build capacity and infrastructure. And so there's going to be some challenges that we're going to come along with that. But I think it's really exciting to see that we're all here today to showcase how we can actually grow that. So some of the challenges, right, in that survey, they felt 29% felt, they had limited availability of local foods. It was difficult to find local vendors. And maybe the local vendors didn't offer a broad range of products. But when you think of that comparison to what schools were using for purchasing prior to that, it's a very automatic system, right? From their broadline distributor, we can put this in our cart, and kind of go from there. So it's a habit change, I will always say. And we're doing our part to educate on how important it is to purchase more local foods. So with that, as you're talking about building local food markets and what it can mean for schools, there's a lot of opportunities. And I know that this is a busy slide, but just in, the same issues in 2022 through 23 are still the same today, and what we can do to really give ourselves a really good opportunity, right? We're going to have some infrastructure and storage issues. There's going to be limited capacity on the producer side or even the school side that have to actually storage those foods. There's capped budgets on both sides, producers and schools. There's limited supplier networks, so it's really great and awesome to see how the local food hub initiative is coming along, because this could really help with our supplier networks and building up that. In addition, a lot of between producers and schools, because we don't have that supply chain for them. We don't have that automated system like broadline distributors have. Coordination and communication can seem very tedious, right? It's tedious to communicate multiple steps of every single order, whether you're on the producer side or the school side. So how can we come together to make that system more efficient and also just easier? For both sides, the schools and for schools and daycares, and also for our producers. So obviously we're in the building capacity and infrastructure stage, and there's a lot of opportunities that we could really do to highlight and build farm to school. Obviously we're going to need grants and funding. We're going to need legislative support. We need policies that support local producers. For example, what happens if they have natural disasters? Establishing regional food hubs, woohoo, for efficient processing and storage and distribution. We need to continue working on finding efficiencies in transportation costs and logistics, and continue to engage our parents, our students, our communities with local food systems. Obviously continue providing educational opportunities like this, and we need to really establish more resources, inform and connect with local foods. There is a really exciting opportunity that I participated in and was talking about how there's a federal program that schools use called the USDA Food Program, and potentially there could be another pathway that federal dollars could be used to purchase more local foods. And so it's just in the beginning stages of drafting a change like that. But I think that would be really exciting to see our North Dakota, Minnesota, our regional producers on these USDA food trucks. So to end with you, there are a lot of opportunities in North Dakota for producers. Obviously, it's going to take money, it's going to take infrastructure, but just thinking about some of these things could really transform how schools purchase food from our local. Big dreams. Obviously, I can't build it all myself, but thinking about how we can really take out a step for schools that are struggling on equipment, if they don't have the equipment or if they don't even have the staff in order to process it. But thinking about how our local producers could supply more frozen foods, right? Even protein. Thinking about how the cut fresh foods would be really important, that they could put right onto their salad bar. It's washed, it's packed, it's delivered to the schools ready to go. Even thinking about, we are the #1 dry bean producer. I'm a family farmer, and we don't have a cannery in North Dakota. And so the dry beans, the pinto beans that our family grows, I would love to see in North Dakota schools, but obviously canneries are very expensive. So there's big dreams out there. But another exciting thing that I will continue to keep my nose on and inform as it comes along is the local foods program in USDA foods program, and how that will be shaping. It's just a draft right now of how those federal dollars can be spent, but I think that would be a really exciting opportunity. And finally, just thank you to producers, thank you to schools for all your hard work for feeding North Dakota children. It's really important what you're doing. We really do appreciate it. And I know it feels hard in this stage to constantly feel like we're building, but I feel like in the last 3 years, we've built a lot of momentum, and we couldn't have done it without you. So thank you to everybody wanting to continue this process. And I will be quiet now.
Oh, thank you so much. Great overview and introduction. And I will give Sam a couple of seconds here to get unmuted, and we'll move on to Sam Jonkowski. I think I got it there. And we'd love to hear from you next.
All right, I'm Sam Jankowski with West Fargo Public Schools. I'm the food service operations manager. I oversee our central kitchen. Here at our central kitchen, we take care of all kettle cooking made with raw ground beef. We do all our home baked quick breads here that we bake and freeze. And then we also do some produce processing, and that's where we lead into our farm to school participation. We've really started this process last year, maybe the year before, started dipping our toes into it. Every year we try to improve a little better of communication with farmers and producers. We've come up with an application if producers want to participate with us in our program. Our district does require approved vendors, so there is a process they have to go for that. We also work with the farmers on, in the beginning, we started with just, we'd kind of take what they had. Now we're starting with the help of our leadership team and our interns we've had. We've come up with some forms. We call them contracts, but nothing's binding, of what we would like or what they think they can produce for us. And then fill in on our salad bars with the local fresh. And then we can subsidize with it from the commercial side, whether it's Cisco, Cashway, places like that. We work with our farmers on delivery times to be brought here to our warehouse. Our staff, then we weigh it, take it in. If it needs to be, if it's purchased by weight or case, we verify everything. We wash it. We have a tumbling vegetable wash sink. So if the product is able to be washed, we wash it. And then we have a Roboku machine that will do some slicing and dicing. And there is times we do some by hand. We are looking at, with working with farmers in the future, a lot of times the products are past. By the time we start school, the harvest time has passed. So we are working on possibly letting some staff come in days when we have, for example, like ears of corn, where we can come in, shuck a bunch of corn as a team. Last year or this fall, we got a grant from Department of Ag for a blast chiller. So we're going to do some processing of blast chilling and getting those in the freezer so we can enjoy this local produce that can be frozen into the future. We also, a lot of our products that we get are cucumbers, tomatoes. We try to use what we can, like tomatoes, for example, on our salad bar, whether it's for tacos or just by themselves. And then if there's, the quality might be past its prime where it's not holding the shape, we do freeze some of the diced tomatoes and we use it in our kettle cooking. So like our chili, we'll use fresh diced tomatoes versus the canned. That's kind of us in a nutshell. If there's any questions or if you want to wait to later after we do some other areas, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, great. I think that why don't we give the full 360 view and have Troy come in and kind of talk a little bit about what it's like from the producer's side, and then open it up for questions from all of you, or for all of you.
All right. So I'm Troy Heald. Me and my wife Tracy, we run Country Blossom Farm. We're primarily an apple orchard. We also do some strawberries. We do some other berries in the summertime, but our main crop is apples, and that's what we've kind of focused on, providing to schools. I think we've been supplying West Fargo. It's been 2 seasons now. I think we've been supplying schools for about 5 years at this point. And you had given me, Kay, some talking points, and that kind of goes into the first one, the scale necessary to do this. Little background, we are a young orchard, I would say still. We started planting our trees in 2010. So our production, we really had to wait for that production to get up. It's not like a tomato you plant in the spring and you're picking it that fall. It takes years to build up that production, and it can be very variable. Um, so we really just had to wait to a point where we had enough fruit to, do this. And we started slow. We did a local grocery store, added some local schools, some smaller ones. And it can vary year to year. This year we had some struggles with that. We had a huge crop, but we had hail twice, so our quality was down. Beyond that, the other struggle we had was fruit size. We had a ton of rain all summer. Our apples were huge. A lot of the schools don't want big apples. Some are capable of, processing them and cutting them and serving them. Others don't have the staff or the time or the equipment to do that. So, that was a big challenge this year. The year before, we had lots of smaller fruit, which was perfect for the farm to school program. I mean, I think from the year before to this 2025, I don't think we supplied half as many apples as we did the year before, simply because we didn't have the fruit that fit what they wanted. And that is a struggle. So, we've made some changes to help improve that by planting some varieties that are, in general, they're a smaller apple, which are perfect for the farm to school. That process takes time. I mean, to get those trees takes me usually a year or two to get them from the nursery. And then you're looking at 3 years before you really get the first crop. And then for it to really get to a point where you're getting a lot of fruit, you're looking at 5 to 6 years. So it's a slow ship to turn. It's something you really got to plan for, but it's something I think we feel strongly about and want to pursue. So, we are going to add more trees that will fit the market that we're looking at with the farm to schools. Um, Let me see. I wrote some notes down here. Production timeline. Do you have the resources to do it? One of the factors is, okay, I'm going to deliver apples to Fargo. Thankfully for apples, it's in the fall, so the weather is fairly temperate. It can be cool. Some in the early season, it can be hot. So we got to, get them out of the cooler, get them there, and get them back on the cooler. When you get later in the season, then you got to worry about them freezing. So it kind of goes both ways there. So you got to take that into consideration. How do I get this to where it has to go, and how do I get it there safely? I think apples are probably a little easier than some crops, but it is something that you'll need to take into consideration. Um, you know, the other thing with, your scaling to make this possible is, what are your markets? For us, we have several markets. We sell fresh on farm. We have an on farm bakery that we, obviously use a lot of our fruit for that. So from ranking point, obviously my top priority is, on farm selling. So that's kind of my first market. So, as our production grew, once we fulfilled that and the bakery needs, then you're at a point where, okay, we do have enough production to bring in another market, which, we initially we did, like I said, some small schools, small grocery store, but going forward, I think the schools are kind of a really good fit for us. It works well. It fits into what we do pretty well. So that's when we're going to go. And then after that, probably the final market that we do is cider production. So we do produce a lot of cider on site at our orchard. Um, like this year when we had hail, it was a great outlet for that fruit. But providing cider to schools is something we want to look into as well. But that's going to require, right now we just do fresh cider. So to provide to the schools, it would have to be frozen to have a better shelf life. Or another option is pasteurizing, which we're not a fan of because obviously you have to heat that product and it does change it a bit. But you also have that longer market time too. So, timing is kind of a big thing for us as well. I think the second point, Kay, that you had asked me to talk about is grower misconceptions with selling to the schools. I think a lot of them think it's a lot of red tape. We have a lot of red tape already given our size and all the different inspections and processes that we have to go through. So it's really not a lot. I mean, I think a lot of the federal guidelines depict how big you grow, no matter where you're selling it to, are going to, provide that red tape as you grow. And I think a lot of them, I think a lot of growers, they're great at growing a product. but they might fall a little short maybe on the, okay, how do I sell it side, the marketing part of it. And how do I reach the schools and get there? I mean, it's really not that difficult to, find the people at the schools. And if you find them, like, West Fargo that are wanting to do this, sometimes they can find you. But I think just reaching out and doing a little legwork, it's not a difficult process. And if it's something that a grower wants to get involved in, I would highly recommend they do. Um, the next point you had asked me to speak about was what operational changes did we have to make? We really didn't have to do a whole lot in this department. We have our full pack line, our wash line. It was really more of putting the apples into boxes versus bags, which we do anyway. So we didn't have a lot of operational changes. I think it's more, probably the biggest thing is, timing. Okay, now, we don't, traditionally we just packed for our farm market store. So we knew what we needed each week. Okay, now what do we need for the schools, and getting the timing and getting them packed during the week and having the staff available to do that. So it wasn't a whole lot of operational change on our part. I'm sure depending on the commodity or what you're growing and producing, that's going to vary a bit. Producer suggestions, what would I suggest to other producers that might want to get into this? I mean, you got to make sure it's feasible. Are you going to have the labor? Are you going to have the production? Is it profitable? I mean, if it's not profitable at the end of the day, it's not going to be sustainable and it's not going to work for you. So, really for us, we just kind of evaluate each market. Okay, here's our top market, and then you go down from there, and here's our production. And it can vary year to year. You know, it's hard to, if you're growing sweet corn, you can obviously add another acre next year and have that product by the fall. For us, like I said earlier, it's a little longer time frame because, the apple production and planting the trees and shifting does take time. So, I think you just got to identify, what you're going to grow, what you want to sell. How are you going to deliver it? Is it going to be fresh? Is it going to be frozen? Is there going to be any processing? How can the schools accept that product? What are they looking for? What size of, tomatoes? Do they want grape tomatoes? Do they want full-size tomatoes? I mean, you really got to identify all these things before you really want to make a decision on what you want to grow and plant for each year. The other biggest thing I think, and I think all of you have kind of touched on this, is the breakdown points. Timing is huge. Um, Obviously, with apples, it fits in perfectly. I think when we start harvest is right around when school starts, and we strive to deliver fruit from early September through December. As I mentioned earlier, this year we weren't able to deliver as much as we had wanted to due to we had hail twice, so we had a lot of damaged fruit in the orchard, and secondly, the sizing problem. That's been a struggle for us, but we're working on it and getting better at that. And we can influence it a bit, but it's not 100% science on that either. And every year is a little bit different. Let's see here. And another question that you had asked, Kay, was, did it replace a market or did it add to them? We've always kind of taken our business and put it in different categories. Like legs on the table. You have to have, if you have one leg that's holding the whole table up, if that leg goes, it's going to fall. So we have a lot of different facets to our business that help support that table, because in any given year, one table might, one area might not be as good as others. So I think it has definitely been, it did not replace a market. I think it is added to the current markets that we have, and, help stabilize our business. I mean, it's something we feel pretty strongly about. I think I'd mentioned UK, we were also involved in starting a food hub up in Alexandria many years ago, and it's something we've always, worked towards. But there's a lot of challenges, and I think that's why we're on this call today. We learned a lot back then, and we're still learning and trying to make this process better. Let's see here. So has participation strengthened our business? And I would say definitely yes. It's another outlet. It's another, different from everything else we do. So it's another revenue stream to help support what we do and keep us moving forward. I think anyone that's looking to get into this, you kind of really have to analyze that and make sure it does fit and it's going to work. And I would say go for it if it's something you want to do. There's a lot of obstacles and there will continue to be, but I think it's something that we have to do. And that's really all I kind of had for notes and stuff here, but I'd love to answer any questions.
Well, that was excellent. I know I learned quite a bit just right away. So I will open it up for questions again if you want to raise your hand and then I can unmute you, but we do have a question right away in the chat or in the Q&A. Chris had asked, Sam, you mentioned the district requires approval of producers and vendors. What are some of the requirements that they must meet in order to be approved?
It's just more on our accounting side. So when they're receiving purchases or invoices, they have to be an approved vendor that we've set up an account for. And then we have a PO system that coincides with that, that the accounting department needs to line up to those invoices. So it's more on the business end of it, not really. We just want all of our purchases to be tracked and approved vendors. So it can be anybody. We just have to sign them up as an approved vendor.
Gotcha, understood. So for any of you and maybe more, I guess it really is for any of you, there's been quite a lot of discussions ongoing about systems, software, tracking, invoicing, and that kind of stuff. What systems are you using or are you seeing used or you have experience with? And how can those help to make everything go smoothly?
Is that directed towards me?
Why don't we start with you, Sam? Since you do have that software, is there something that you're already using or we're already using as part of the school district, or have you had to go out and source something different to kind of manage these orders and what's coming in and your vendors? So talk a little bit about that.
So as of right now, a lot of it is just phone calls and emails with the producers and farmers. We've created a form this year that we're going to be sending out to everybody that we work with on products we're interested in them growing, their anticipated growth that they think they could do. Like I said, nothing is binding, but we just want to we don't want people overproducing either, and expecting us to take it all when we said with farmer A, we were going to take 500 pounds, and then farmer B is also going to give us 200 pounds, and that's way more than we may need. So yeah, we've created a form of products we want, uh, estimated weekly poundage or case, however it may be, and then kind of awarding those items to the farmer so they know what to grow, so they're not doubling up on something, um, things like that. And then we'll probably still be a lot of communicating through just email. This is what we were able to harvest this week. We can deliver our scheduled days, or next week we'll be harvesting this. We're anticipating 200 pounds, things like that.
Great. Amanda, do you have experience with other schools? What are some other ways that other schools are managing that kind of ordering and software and exchange process? Maybe you can shine a light there.
Sure. It's actually very similar. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of there's not a big software system out there right now that says, hey, we're going to put all the producers on here for pounds, and then the schools can just order it that way. And I think that's where like a food hub initiative would really come to be successful, is that they are working directly with the producers. Then there's, a coordinator that works directly with the schools to say, this is how many pounds. Schools can then go log on into this system and say, this is how many pounds I need of this certain product. So that currently doesn't necessarily exist right now. It's really the schools are and the producers are pioneering it in their communication to figure out, just like Sam said, how many pounds they need, when it's going to be delivered. Even like Troy said, this is how, the varieties that we have. And so I think we're really looking for that next jump into what can we make efficient for schools and producers to make this a more easier ordering system. And right now it's really been put on the shoulders of schools and producers to make that. So we have looked at federal grants in the past of how we can do that type of system. We have looked at it more of a state procurement, for example, of what it would look like in USDA food. So that could be a potential eventually in the USDA foods program, which is the federal program that schools have dollars to use as well. So maybe that's kind of where the next step for that. But I think for more locally, this local foods hub initiative could really help with that. And that's kind of what was happening before when we had Bisman Co-op. They were kind of the aggregator. They had the person coordinating with Bismarck Public Schools, for example, to say this is how much lettuce we need, and you guys are just going to come here to pick it up. But West Fargo has really built this system into their operation. So it's not that we would ever do anything to change that, but what can we do to help enhance that so other schools across the state have the same access?
Great. And I see we have a couple hands going up and some questions, but Troy, did you have anything to add in your experience with building a food hub on that system, or software?
That was many years ago, and at the time, I think, two competing kind of food hub software systems, and I cannot remember which one we went with, and it did work fairly well, but I really wasn't on that side of it. I was really on the other side of it, the growing side. I wasn't too much involved in the software, but I can't remember what it was called, but there are programs out there for food hubs
Yeah.
that do exist, so hope that helps.
Nope, absolutely. That's great. I do see Joanna, you had your hand up for a little bit here. There we
Yeah,
go.
thanks. So kind of following up with what Amanda was saying, in our area, we're very rural, so I think it's more like the producers go into the schools. We're just not as far along as West Fargo. Um, from the perspective of either Amanda or Sam, does it help if the producers have product available like online and whoever's in charge of that um, ordering in that particular school? I mean, do you get the schools asking for like that, or do they not care if it's like an email list or a phone call? I mean, what are you hearing that is the preferred way? Because I have the capability to set up like wholesale pricing on my farm's website. It just becomes a lot of management, on my part to make sure that that's updated with current inventory if they're ordering throughout the week versus a day a week. I'm just kind of curious how you've seen that work well.
Um, yeah, for us, we just do everything. We don't give like each individual school options of what they're going.
Right.
They order through me like sliced cucumbers, for example, and we send them out in a 2-quart tub. Um, they I just work with what we need, what our weekly usage is with produce we use. Um, so I think if you were able to have, if it's, we're such a large district, this is my job. This is what I focus on is ordering.
Right,
Where
right.
in a small rural area, does that cook manager or staff member have the time to communicate with you? Where, yeah, if there was an online platform, it might be helpful where they can quickly jump on, put in what they're
Mm,
looking for, and then if there's some way to communicate back, like, you asked for this, I can only meet this, and then they can
right.
adjust like we do here with our wholesale foods.
My
Yeah.
follow-up question is just like kind of, and maybe I need to meet with Amanda sometime to look at this more closely, is what are they used to? Like what is the normal interaction with US Foods or with Cisco, and how are they picking out their fruits and vegetables, and how are they getting help planning their menus? Because I suspect that some of the schools I work with are not really making a lot of those decisions themselves. They're kind of going with like a planned example. And I don't know if that's coming from Cisco or US Foods or, so I'm just trying to figure out what are they used to and how can I match or enhance that? So
Yeah,
thank you. Thanks for all your insights.
I am good friends with one of the produce buyers. Our district, we buy through Cisco is our wholesaler this year. And I know him, and we do communicate with him and our sales rep, saying, hey, we won't be picking up, or our typical orders are going to go down on this item because we're going to be getting local produce. That helps them out so they're not having waste or ordering in too much, because we are a large district and we do take a lot of business, where in some of those small areas it might not be as effective for them because they're only ordering a case or two of something here and there from the wholesaler, where it's not as necessary to communicate that between everyone. I don't know if that helps you out or answers your question.
Yeah, it's all good insight. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Great. Candace has also had her hand up for a little bit here.
Thanks, Kay. I guess I'm coming from more of a food hub perspective. And I've been working with Red River Harvest Co-op for the last 5 years, as well as the Moorhead Food Hub. And we've had a bit of contact with schools in the area. Kind of what we're finding is that producers like working directly with the schools, and the schools like working directly to the producers. As a food hub, we're kind of under this thought that because we have a platform, right, for buyers to go and see what's available from each of the producers, shop for what they like, put it in their cart, we can deliver it to them on a set date. So I guess our assumption was that that would be similar to like a Cisco or US Foods system, and that would be easier to incorporate. Kind of thought that would be the same thing with like local chefs and stuff too, but it hasn't been. There's been kind of this disconnect of buying local food in the same way that you buy commercial food, and which is, and there's more of these like one-on-one connections with farmers and buyers, which is great to see, because then you get more of that local food connection piece where the buyers and the farmers are having those conversations one-on-one, which is, a great way to grow the movement. We're seeing that all across Minnesota. The Moorhead Food Hub is one of 9 food hubs across the state. And a lot of the folks, my counterparts doing that work, are finding the same things, where the schools are going directly to farmers, farmers are going directly to schools, and skipping out on that whole food hub aspect and using that software. And I don't know, some of that has to do with pricing, or if there's like there's an increased cost for using a platform, having labor to run those programs, to offer delivery, to have a truck to provide the delivery. So a lot of logistics to work out there is kind of what we're finding. A lot of folks in like more rural Minnesota areas are driving, an hour in one direction to pick up from farmers and an hour in another direction to drop off at a school. So yeah, just kind of some of those logistics need to be worked out in terms of having a hub and a platform for schools to order off of. What we found with Red River Harvest Co-op that, sorry, I'm nervous here, is we had offered a workshop probably a year ago in November, and just brought farmers together with school nutritional staff, and brought in some speakers from the North Dakota and the Minnesota side, and just provided that platform for people to like meet and greet, to learn and then meet one another. we had a really great representation from West Fargo Public Schools there, which was great to see. And those conversations, and how those rolled out, right? Connecting farmers with buyers and like that's the main thing is that we've increasing sales for producers in our area. But just some of the things that we've kind of ran into in terms of running a food hub and having that sales platform, and making those connections between farmer and buyers through those programs.
Excellent insights. Thank you. Is there anybody that wants to respond? I think Sam, you started something
Yeah,
there.
I got, I don't know, maybe there are more questions for a future food hub type situation, but for us, for example, we're in the Tri-City area here, Moorhead, Fargo, West Fargo. So a lot of our local producers are willing to drive here because we're close. But I do understand the benefits of a hub for all those rural areas where I don't know if maybe necessarily it's not a physical site where if there could be the hub could be an organization where you're having a driver with a box truck go pick up produce and deliver to all these sites because once again it's hard for these little rural areas. They have to set up a special time probably after or before hours to go get it. We obviously that's not one of our struggles we have where we have a benefit where everyone's near and is willing to and producers are not having to have 10 stops where if there was one central vehicle as the hub rather than a building or something, maybe just something to get snowballing on that concept.
I think that's a
Absolutely.
good point. I was just going to say too, I think the communication piece between producers and schools will always be there. But what ways can we enhance it? So I definitely think like, the insights that Red River that Candace shared, I still think are going to be important. I think schools are always going to want to know that they have a connection to local producers. That's what farm to school is about. So it's not necessarily that we're always going to try to cut out that piece, but how can we enhance it? What can we do to replicate, just like Sam talked about in rural areas? So I think it's always going to be important that the producers and the schools are communicating with each other, and that a software system definitely is not going to ever replicate, can't replicate that. And it shouldn't. That's what why it's so important, right? The idea is that we're really cutting out essentially kind of the middleman. We're cutting out the broadline distributor to make sure that the funds and the dollars are staying more in our community. And I think we can still accomplish that with a food hub initiative, where it kind of is carpooling our foods, right? Especially for those rural areas. So very good insights.
So there was a question earlier from Brian. Does the school have a set price of what you would pay for a product?
Yes, on that form I talked about with our estimated poundage usage. We give a suggested price and the farmer can then counter or say, yes, that price is good, or we need to discuss it. And then we find a happy ground that we're both comfortable purchasing and selling. But yeah, we did not create this form ourselves. We worked, she talked about that meeting last fall with the farmers from the area. That's where we really kind of took off. Bismarck had a model that they made. We looked at schools down in the cities, how their forms are, and we've taken both and made our own.
Great. Another one came in. Two central kitchen questions. One, is the facility shared with any other school districts or organizations? And then I'll read you the second one right away. Which types of funding sources were used to develop that? So either separately or together there. I'll kick that off to you again, Sam.
So our central kitchen is its own entity. We are not sharing space with any other district. We have our neighboring district, Fargo. Their central kitchen is also district office, maintenance, everything in that building. But yes, we are food service only. All our deliveries come to we have a receiving door and forklift and warehouse, and it's all shipped out from here. So it's only food service related. What was the second half again?
That is, which types of funding sources were used to develop that?
Um, so as I understand, and Dana, you can correct me if I'm wrong, our central kitchen was a referendum project before my time with the district. I was part of an expansion. We were the tail end of the referendum, so the department did have to make some modifications to meet funding and with the space we had. Um, but yeah, it was part of a school referendum. And we did do an expansion 2 summers ago. We expanded our warehouse and freezer areas, and that was our own funding that we got some approval through the USDA with.
Right. And then I want to call out to Amanda posted in the chat that there's a video highlighting or a highlight video featuring Sam and Troy providing a little more insight into the central kitchen and the delivery process. And if you don't get a chance to snag that in the chat, I will also send that and some additional material out in follow-up emails after the webinar. What other burning questions might exist out there? Oh, you know what? I just saw Ellen's come in here. She said that she'd be interested in hearing from Sam about experiences in purchasing locally produced meats and if you can share any names of local meat producers or processors serving West Fargo schools.
We have not directly worked with beef farmers. That's something we are currently looking into. We did buy some local beef through USDA commodities. That was a couple years ago out of Mott, North Dakota. So we did use local beef, but it wasn't through our farm to school program that we sourced and purchased from. So, but we do have it on our radar. That's one of our next steps in this program growth. We do want to look at local beef.
Maybe Sam, you can talk about your guys' tilt skill and how many pounds. I found that fascinating when I visited.
So yeah, if anyone is ever in the West Fargo area, my email is obviously on this connection. Email me, call me if you want to stop by and see our facility. We have three, I think they're 60-gallon kettles with stir arms. And like this morning, we had taco meat in all our 15 elementary schools. So each kettle, two had 250 and one had 270 pounds of raw ground beef that we cooked off, drained, seasoned, panned into hot carts and went out on our trucks this morning by 8:30.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yes.
Another one came in. Also, like to hear from Troy on your perspectives on pros and cons in selling to schools and grocery stores as compared to participating in farmers markets and other direct to customer models.
Yeah, so when we started planting our orchard, we actually grew about 5 acres of vegetables at the time as well, which we did 3 different farmers market. I think at the time we did Fergus Falls, Alexandria, and Glenwood. And I think Alexandria was 3 days a week. Glenwood and Fergus, I think, were 2 days a week. And we continued to do that while the orchard was growing, not really producing yet. Once we opened our farm market at the actual orchard in 2015, we did stop growing vegetables because we just didn't have time with everything else we had going on to get our farm ready to open to the public. We did go back to the farmer's market after that, but we only went back with baked goods. We did that for a couple years, and then we stopped doing that. Not that it wasn't profitable. It's just as the orchard grew, it demanded more from us, and we just couldn't manage doing it all. Um, Farm markets are good. It just doesn't fit into what we do currently. Um, like I said, we were part of the food hub in Alexandria, a local harvest market that was started up many years ago. It doesn't no longer exist, but that was the kind of the same time frame when we were doing veggies, and also our apple production kind of fit into that as well in the early years. Um, Obviously, our farm market at the actual orchard is obviously it's our top market. It's where you're going to make your most money. So, um, once we kind of outgrew that with our production, and then the bakery along with it, then we went on to starting to add the schools and grocery stores. And then after we kind of had that need filled, we had to do something with damaged fruit. We've had hail 3 years in a row. So we added our cider market, which we do fresh cider, and we also produce hard cider at our farm as well. Again, it really depends on what fits, your operation. We have a lot of infrastructure. We have two buildings. One's our retail, one's our production, storage, processing building. Used to love going to farmers markets, seeing the people and interacting. I really enjoyed that. But now they come to our store, so I still get to do that, but it's a little different than being at the farmers market. So um, you got to weigh what works for you, I guess. If it's a situation where you're trying to contemplate which market you want to go for, we had one local supermarket that we were supplying, and they were great. It was local. The owners would come out to the orchard every late summer, look at the crop, and we'd talk about the fall. And then they sold. And since then we've kind of stopped supplying them. People have changed, people have left, and it just I don't know, it didn't um, fit what we wanted to do. So we kind of really focused more on the schools and have been kind of building that. Um, it just works for us. So, I mean, that's really, depending on what you're doing, what the product is, all those things you got to take into consideration. Obviously, a farm market is going to be you're going to probably do your best margin wise, but you got to go there, you got to pack, you got to be there, and all those things where if you're supplying a school, you pack, you deliver, you're done. So, there's pros and cons to all things. It really depends on what fits your operation and how you're set up. I mean, do you have storage? Can you produce enough? What size school? I mean, I have schools like West Fargo that'll take 40 bushel boxes every couple weeks, and then I have smaller schools that'll take 6 every 2 weeks. So you just got to decide what you can do and what you want to do. I hope that answers your question. If not, let me know, please.
I think that was great. We'll give a couple seconds here if there's any other burning questions that people want to pop in with. I'm also going to reference my notes.
I'll make a comment. I am very advocate too on social media about advertising or showing what we're getting from local producers. One of our farms, they're a nonprofit out of Moorhead, and their farmers are special needs clients that they do all the planting, watering, weeding, picking, harvesting. So we put that out there. They have events at their farm that if I see it, I try to share it and say, hey, this is what our school works with. And that is on my personal page. Our district does have a PR, but we try to also put it out there, have that director put the information out when we're working with local farmers. I'll say Troy's Farm, if you're ever in the Alexandria area, it's a great place in the fall to visit. It's now my husband and I, we go one weekend, one Saturday in the fall, and we make a day trip of it. So it's a great place. And if you have a great farm and we have great experiences, I put it out there for people to hear and see. So
That's very awesome because I think everybody likes to not only be talked about in such a great way, but also that tells others too that the message will get out there. So I think that that's a really, really good point to make. And judging by the hearts, that was very appreciated all around. So, well, I think I have exhausted my list of questions. So why don't I do this one last thing and throw it out to any of you or all of you on the panel? Is there any one piece of advice or one parting uh, bone of wisdom that you would like to leave with us as we continue down this road of education and co-learning together about local foods and how that enters different marketplaces?
I think a piece of advice, and maybe it's just more of a support message, is that there are a lot of entities, a lot of agencies that are supporting building more local foods into our North Dakota schools, and obviously partnering with even our Minnesota producers to make that happen. And I think the movement is really strong right now. If you need help, you have more direct questions of how you can work with a school or a daycare, I'm always available, can make that reach out. I even, a couple of years ago worked with Joanna Larson, and we connected her with her local school in Rockford, and hoping to build more on that. And sometimes it just takes that first communication piece. There is demand for it. Schools do want to purchase locally. It's just my job is to help them make that happen and to work with producers. So if you need that help, you need that assistance, if you don't know how to communicate with the school or even a daycare that you want to work with, connect with me. But just a positive message is that the support is there. I think the movement is there. We're in a really good time frame for what farm to school can be in North Dakota.
I'll also add,
Great.
we have a lot of connections. So if any of you ever need to reach out to me, I may know somebody that knows somebody that you're looking to reach out to. Like Amanda always puts out there too, this farm to school is not like you don't get a membership, you don't sign up for it, you don't register. You don't have to, you're doing one thing, you're doing it. And then also the in Amanda's earlier slide, it only helps us out and also helps the local economy. We, as under procurement, we have to buy American, and we're only allotted 10% of our budget to be imported goods. So if we can stretch our buy American through the local farmers, that might be a selling point for you producers to reach out and be like, hey, this will help keep your buy American percentage down. So if you want any more information on that, be happy to reach out to me or Amanda on that. So
All right, for the producers, I think the one piece of advice I would say is try not to do everything. I think I talked about this earlier before we started, but we started our orchard. I remember someone told me, they said, don't try to do everything. And it's easy to try to do everything, but we've kind of learned over the years that that's not the best way. Focus and do a good job at what you do, whether it's what you're growing, the markets you're going after, whatever. Don't try to do all of them. So that's my advice.
Oh, I tell you what, from a marketing communications background, you guys just nailed the messaging there. And I really appreciate the positivity. I really appreciate your willingness to pull back the curtain and let us take a look at the really great things that are going on. And as posted in the comments, it is great that we're headed in this direction in North Dakota. So as a reminder to the attendees, I will follow up with a feedback survey and additional material that the participants have shared with me. And I really appreciate everyone being willing to work with me as we tried a new tool. I promise that will get better in the future. And thank you everyone for your participation.